To today's Redevelopment Agency board meeting. We're happy to have you here. While we continue to hold our meeting remotely due to the declarations of emergency related to the pandemic. We're happy to have you here while we continue to hold our meeting remotely due to the declarations of emergency related to the pandemic and earthquake. Even though there isn't a location to attend meetings in person, this is still considered an open and public meeting. Please keep joining us remotely until the day it's safe to gather again. We also welcome members of the public who may be watching our usual video feeds on the City Council's agenda page, YouTube, SLC TV, or Facebook Live. We're glad to have you here with us and hope that you're staying safe. We may have some public comment about the RDA's contract to sell the Utah Theater located at 144, 158 South Main to Hines Development. These commenters may also bring up a recent application to refer to the city's voters a zoning designation for the Utah Theater and a recent proposal to sell the theater to a group interested in saving the theater. To be sure that commenters and the public have an accurate picture of the board's role at this time, I wanted to be sure that we have a shared understanding of the facts. The sale of property is an administrative function, and the contract was executed by former Mayor Biskupski. The reason for the board vote in December of 2019 was to approve the value write-down of the property per the real property disposition policy. As a part of that vote, the board required that the historic elements of the building go through an enhanced documentation process, and that the developer confirms that as a part of the development, they would construct publicly accessible green open space in addition to a mid-block walkway, and that the developer would provide detailed costs and plans for the green space development. The historic documentation has been completed. So the purpose of the meeting today is to confirm the second condition, which is to ensure the developer is building publicly accessible green open space as part of the development. There is a petition to refer to the city's voters. There is a petition to refer to the city's voters a zoning change for this property. Pursuant to state law, this is currently being reviewed by the attorney's office and the finance department. And so any questions from the board about that should be held until after the analysis required by state law. We are on item A under comments, and we start our RDA meetings with comments to the board. As a reminder, written comments can be submitted to RDA offices at P.O. Box 145455, Salt Lake City, Utah 84111-5455. Your comments about any business, or if you have any feedback to give us regarding today's meeting's setup, please contact us. We are accepting your comments through WebEx, and for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate telephone line. The board has always had rules of decorum that are created to advance the legitimate government objectives of having an orderly, efficient meeting that moves through the agenda and gives everybody or everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions. In person, we had the added benefit of being able to see each other, which helped us to get to know our constituents and engage more meaningfully. We still want to provide a space for people to feel comfortable and safe to participate. In order to achieve this, our rules of decorum extend from the moment you arrive into our virtual meeting. To help facilitate our comment period, please be respectful, avoid yelling or making racial slurs, obscene, or defamatory remarks. The board respects all points of view and will welcome new insights. However, using foul language or personal attacks make the public comment forum uncivil and intimidating for others. This meeting is also being broadcast on television and the internet, and so we will more strictly enforce the use of profanity. This will be considered your advance warning against the use of profanity. If someone uses profanity, we will mute your microphone and you will forfeit your opportunity to address the board tonight. If you feel you need to use profanity to express your point, you're welcome to email board members or call our comment line at 801-535-7654. In addition, just as we would ask for your name in our in-person meetings, we have requested your name during the registration process. To limit disruption, your name cannot include a message or violate our rules of decorum. If your registered name doesn't meet this requirement, then our staff will use the chat feature to gather that information from you. Robert Nutzman from our staff is helping to moderate the meeting and will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate. Please monitor the chat screen for information and/or feel free to message our staff with any questions. He will be calling the names of those who wish to comment and unmuting lines. When Robert unmutes your line and lets you know it's your turn, please state your first and last name just as you would in our in-person meetings. Indicate the topic you're speaking on and the 2-minute timer will begin. At the 2-minute mark, we will announce time and your microphone will be muted. We will now open our general comment period. Robert, please start with our first comment.
Hi, Anna. It's Amanda. I will be calling the names today.
Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome. So for general comment, I see right now we have roughly 15 names so far. First one we have is Angela Montenegro, followed by Michael Valentine, and then Carolyn Lambert. So Angela Montenegro, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, I'm Angelo Montenegro. I'm just making a general comment and statement to the SLC RDA on behalf of the Rose Park Brown Berets. It is a privilege to be a part of this meeting, but don't get too excited. That's not a compliment. It is very telling that this ostensibly public meeting is taking place at a time when most people are at work, are getting ready for work, or sleeping after a long night of work. You see, we care about real people, not just lines on a map or numbers on a chart. So, that being said, stop gentrifying the West Side. We demand that Dallin Jolly's construction permit for the Kozo apartment development be revoked. We demand a stop to any and all construction of luxury apartments. We demand a stop to the North Temple Master Plan. These developments will get people thrown out of their homes, destroy families, and force people out onto the street. We demand real affordable housing for all with an AMI no greater than 50%. If a single mother with children working for minimum wage cannot afford to live in it, then these developments are not truly affordable. That is all.
Well, thank you. Next, we have Michael Valentine, followed by Carolyn Lambert, and then Casey McDonough. Michael, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, perfect. So great to be back here. So I'm sure, as most of you guys know, on Friday I submitted a formal offer to buy the Utah Theater. We want to see it restored and reopened as soon as possible. I think most of you know we've been trying to fight and save this for 2 years now, since this deal has come forward. I've heard pretty much every single council member lament the loss of this theater and what it would mean, and ask for a plan to how we can actually save it, and wish we had a way to do that. So we spent the last 2 years putting that together, a very real plan. This is a very real offer. We've been in talks with our sister theater in Tacoma and also the League of Historic Theaters. It's a national group, the experts on this subject. We also have uncovered the truth that the property is still eligible for the historical registry and up to 20% tax credits, which would go directly to restoration. So we're requesting that we can meet directly with the board and talk more details. It's just impossible to update on all the information we've uncovered in 2 years and more details about our offer in 2 minutes, here. So we don't feel this deal is good for the city. LaSalle and Hines have had exclusive agreements for 5 years. Their public application is still incomplete. They have an old appraisal here, and all this new evidence has come to light, So I think losing this theater would be a loss for Utah and Salt Lake. And not only that, but for the whole entire country for generations. It's something we'd never recover from. We want to see the theater restored, reopened, and we kind of call it the crown jewel of Sundance downtown Salt Lake. So we want to invest and double down on our theater, our historic culture, and the future of film in Utah. We hope you support this endeavor to see the theater saved, and we'll hold you to some of the comments you've made in the past about looking for a real solution to restoring this theater. I look forward to talking to all of you more. I know a lot of you personally, and I thank you for this time.
Thank you. Next we have Carolyn. Oh, I apologize. Next we have Casey McDonough, followed by Paul Wheeler, and then David Berg. Casey, go ahead.
Yeah, let me, there we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. This is Casey McDonough, and I'm making some comments about the Utah Theater sale. And I appreciate you highlighting what you're looking at today, which I think is the open space and mid-block walkway. So I'm going to try to make some comments specific to that. The way that this deal was portrayed to the public, I think, when this came out, was that there would be a park, a city park, or something akin to it. And I can already see, what I think is the writing on the wall, that that's not really what we're getting. We're getting a private space that will have some sort of public easement. And undoubtedly, as I think has happened in the past, we'll probably have conditions such as restrictions on free speech, what can or cannot happen there. And as far as mid-block walkways go, my current understanding is that's not actually what we're getting either. We're going to be getting staircases or elevators or escalators or some other access method to get to a open space on top of a parking garage. I think when it's presented to the public that we're getting a mid-block walkway, I think what they're perceiving is something like the connections that we have now between Main Street and Regent Street, or the connections that you see leading back to the restaurant from 2nd South near the Capitol Theater. It's also interesting that as we've looked at the block at large and how the cities utilize their park space already, there's Kilowatt Park, which seems to get very little attention, and even more alarmingly, there is the Dinwiddie Park, which the RDA's own literature claims was a very successful project, but is seemingly simply just a fenced off area with no access to the public at all. So we have these existing spaces that get no attention, yet we're giving the theater away to get something that's not really a park and not really a mid-block walkway. And so I think, I'll end my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have David Berg, followed by Melissa Allen, and then Zion Tuisasoa. Just 1 second, please. David Berg, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. So I absolutely encourage the RDA and City Council to save the Utah Pantages Theater and open our existing mid-block walkway and park, Dinwiddie Park, which is right in the shadow of the theater. We do, as I mentioned, we already do have a public green open space and mid-block walkway, Dinwiddie Park, which is just north of the theater. Unfortunately, it's been locked off and closed to public access as it's been used for mostly just storage of restaurant equipment and an occasional private restaurant patio. It's been leased for peanuts and closed to the public for about 30 years with no public process. There's more than ample vacant space on the same block for Hines to do their skyscraper luxury condo development. But of course, they'd have to, there's more than ample space on the block and throughout downtown and Salt Lake City, but they'd have to pay market rate for that land to build rather than this sweetheart $0 deal, corporate welfare's away, a public asset, and the last standing movie palace in Salt Lake City. I'd like the RDA to preserve our history, to say no to yet another luxury condo tower that would demolish a jewel of the city. And please open Dinwiddie Park. I think it's just disastrous and against public Salt Lake City code that this was given away. The sweetheart deal happened just days after checks were issued to members of the RDA and City Council, who of course voted favorably for that. Thank you.
Next, we have Melissa Allen, followed by Zion Tuisasoa, and then Madison Can. Melissa, go ahead. Melissa Allen, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much. My name is Melissa Allen. I am the board president of a nonprofit organization called Make Salt Lake. We currently share the property located on 100 South and 663 West with the Utah Arts Alliance. I want to the board and entreat this group to facilitate future proactive conversations with nonprofit organizations such as ourselves and the Utah Arts Alliance. I've prepared a statement. The unilateral gentrification and homogenization of Salt Lake City will create a city devoid of culture. Gentrification of the West Side and the North Temple areas, redevelopment and bulldozing of historically significant buildings, and eviction of arts and culture organizations without proactive efforts to together find, develop, and implement collaborative solutions is an effective death blow to Utah's few diverse communities and hundreds of our local artists and artisans. Salt Lake City currently has the opportunity to work together with organizations like ours and to build and grow in a way that bolsters these communities. That's something that we would like to do together, and that we need your partnership in order to effectively create that environment and seek those opportunities. Our organizations can provide immense value to the community, but being evicted from properties without ongoing conversations and the opportunity to find new locations is extremely difficult for small nonprofit organizations. So again, I would entreat you to please work together with us. We'd like to have an ongoing dialogue to seek new solutions, since we are going to be no.
Thank you. Next, we have Zion Tuisoa, followed by Madazone Cancan, and then Shane France. Zion, go ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, hi, my name is Zion Tuisoa. I've been a resident of Utah for my entire life, and I just like it to be known that I stand with the restoration of the Utah Arts Pantages Theater. I think it would be really disappointing to see more quote unquote luxury apartments go into a spot that is extremely historic and a part of Utah's history and culture. Something that, you know, we can pride ourselves on, being residents of Salt Lake City. I think it'd be just extremely disappointing. So I would just like to say I'd love to see the restoration of the Pantages Theater. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Madazone Cancan, followed by Shane France, and then Alexander Woods. Madazone, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Madazone Cancan. My pronouns are they, and I am also here to speak on behalf of the restoration for the Pantages Theater. I am a local producer and I advocate for queer spaces wherever I am, and there are very, very few queer-friendly spaces in Salt Lake City, specifically downtown Salt Lake City, that would be open to hearing our voices and providing space for us to continue to perform. I've been following this project since Michael took over and has been advocating so hard to raise funds. And similar to the sentiments presented by others, it would be a tragedy to lose this piece of history, not only because of the history involved, but because of all the opportunities that would be lost to a generation of queers that truly need a space to perform. That's my primary goal, is to just continue to advocate for space wherever we can find it, particularly downtown. And with it being also a film friendly space, we need to continue to provide access to films that would not otherwise have places to be showcased. That's really all the comments I have at this time. I truly appreciate the space, and I appreciate everyone who's been advocating for the theater, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Madazone. Next, we have Shane France, followed by Alexander Woods, and then Derek Dyer. Shane, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to echo some of the earlier comments. I actually found it kind of convoluted and difficult to find out how to join this meeting. So I'll just tell you, I please speak for so many interested parties and friends that had difficulty. They've expressed to me difficulty in joining. And in addition, expressed that they would like to join but could not because of the unusual hour most people are working. So, but please like to express my support for renovating and saving the historic Pantages Theater. Folks, this is so important to our city and to our history. You can get to a point in life where you just don't have anything exciting to go see in a city. You end up filling it with things like, you know, Olive Garden and Old Navy. Well, every city has that. That's nothing special, but we really need something unique and special, not high-rise condominiums. I'd say my family's been involved with theater and had a grandfather actually played theater organ accompaniment to silent movies in this theater way back in the 20s, and just very, very interested in saving this unique piece of history for our city. I'd also add that San Francisco famously demolished their San Francisco Fox Theater, and it's come down as one of the great tragedies of their city. So many people regret it to this day, and I believe that was done in the 60s, and it's just thought of as what a tremendous loss. So anyway, thank you for your hearing me and for your support to find a way to save this. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Next, we have Alexander Woods, followed by Derek Dyer, and then Kevin Hartley. Alexander, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, my name is Alexander Woods. I'm a filmmaker. I am not from Utah. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. But I've fallen in love with this place. You know, it's beautiful mountains, the Great Salt Lake, all of the whole landscape, the Red Rock. I'm officially a jazz fan now. Let's go Jazz. I've fallen in love with this, you know, truly interesting community. This place is crazy unique, and it feels, you know, thank God for like the documentary that came out recently, because it kind of shows Murder Among the Mormons, which is on Netflix, directed by Jared Hess and Tyler Measom. I'm really happy to see Utah kind of take center stage on a national scale, and it just makes me think, like, this place is strange and unique and fun and interesting, and we have so many untold stories. And I think it would be an absolute tragedy to see this theater be turned into something unmemorable and bland and, you know, boring. So I guess I hope that you can hear everybody out and understand that this is the real investment. Like, you know, it's cool to see big tech, big money, and all this stuff flowing in and our city growing, but like, who gives a crap if we don't have something interesting about you know, something interesting to share. And I hope that this can be a space for all types of voices. Okay.
Thank you. Next, we have Derek Dyer, followed by Kevin Hartley, and then McKenna Taylor. Derek, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you for having me. I'm just here to speak out in favor of saving the Pantages Theater. I know a lot of you, and a lot of you know that I care deeply about our community, especially our cultural community and arts community. And you know, I've heard. Also, I want to preface this by saying any constructive criticism that I'm going to say is not directed at anyone on this call, the mayor or the city council. I'm not saying any of you have done anything wrong. But in my perspective of this is that we need to save some of those things that make Salt Lake unique and cool, the kind of things that makes this a place that people want to live. You know, I've seen a lot of priority put on housing, which is important also. But I think that there's room for cultural spaces as well as housing projects. My perspective of this particular issue is that it's not how can we save this theater, but how can we not save this theater? It's a great investment to our community. It's an economic driver. We will make the money back in different ways, but especially through the quality of life that the arts gives our community. And so I am in favor of supporting that. I would also just say I've heard the narrative that we can't afford to save this, or that we've tried to figure it out and we just couldn't. And so I can tell you, I've personally called the city multiple times about this theater space. And even before that, calling Rick Howe when he owned the property. No one has really been interested in actually working on a fundraising campaign for this. And so I think opening, whether the city retains ownership of it or sells it to someone else, I think being able to just fundraise for the project in the first place before we say we haven't been able to figure out how to fund the project would be the first step. Thank you for hearing me.
Next, we have Kevin Hartley, followed by McKenna Taylor, and that's the last name I have on the queue. Kevin, go ahead.
Hello all, thanks for taking the time here. As stated, my name is Kevin Hartley, and I also support saving and restoring the Utah Pantages Theater. The current deal with Hines and LaSalle Group to create luxury apartments in place of the Utah Pantages Theater is still in a review state, with many of the details incomplete in their proposal. Because of this, we urge City Council and the RDA to reject the current deal and accept a new and better offer to not only restore the theater, but bring massive measurable revenue to the city from the film community and festivals in Utah. This theater, which was originally built in 1918, though does need restorative work, has been said to be in rather great shape for restoration by experts at the League of Historic American Theaters, as well as the experts at our sister Pantages theaters and around the country who have lent their well-informed advice. The Tacoma Pantages Theater, which is of similar size and needed similar restorations such as seismic upgrades, was restored in 2018 for nearly a third of the proposed cost the RDA has argued is too expensive. We are here to propose a realistic plan for consideration that the City Council and the RDA Board has not seen on how to strategically save and restore this theater, as well as a detailed plan on how this endeavor can generate millions of dollars in revenue each year for the city. We thank you for taking time to hear our passionate statements of concern, and we ask for you to hold a public meeting to review this new restoration proposal to save the Utah Pantages. Thank you.
And next we have McKenna Taylor. McKenna, go ahead.
Oops, can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank
Perfect.
you.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm McKenna Taylor. Thank you for the time. And just to echo everyone's comments, they're so good. I am here to support the preservation and saving of the Pantages Theater, and to reconsider the current offer you have out, and to open up a public meeting to review the new offer that Michael and Save the Pantages Theater group has shared with you. Instead of being kind of repetitive to what you've already heard, I'll talk about something that I know of. I've worked with Sundance Film Festival for the past 7 years, helping them book event spaces for the festival as a sponsor, as a private event space. And about 2 years ago, they shared this comment with me saying, we're really worried about the festival moving forward. Park City has basically sold off all of the places that we usually screen and hold events at, and they've created condos. And now we don't have enough spaces to host our festival anymore. which is actually a really big dramatic concern economically for the community of Park City, but additionally of Utah. It's such a driver and cultural hub. But on top of that, I just want to highlight that the arts and preserving the arts isn't just kind of a fun, nice thing to do that pat yourself on the back. It really does stimulate the economy and our community as a whole when we keep and preserve these spaces. And especially when it comes to historic spaces, you just can't get them back. So while we could make another theater down the street, we can't make another Pantages. We have this opportunity to support our cultural heritage. To agree with Angelo earlier from the Brown Berets, additionally, affordable housing, the affordable housing that this group is offering the developers is only single studio apartments, and that's not affordable housing. A family can't live in a studio apartment. So it just feels like this developer isn't actually concerned about the housing crisis or
Time.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. And we do have one more speaker for general comment. We have Tagielu Vai. Tagielu, are you there?
That's it. I'm done.
Oh, I can hear you. Tagielu Vai, are you there?
Babe. Yeah.
Oh,
Hello?
hi. It's your turn to give comment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I am just commenting on the Kozo development and through Dallin Jolly to be built in Rose Park. And as an artist and a community member and as our neighbors, I am strongly against this. And in addition to what our other neighbors have said about the Pantages Theater, I'm also against the redevelopment of that as well. And you need to have like real artists and real people that are part of the community, that build the community, that invest and build the economy of Salt Lake City to also attend the arts. And so for the there are many artists and many families that will be displaced. And so I'm calling also to see that the way that this meeting is set up is very frustrating and elitist. Working class people cannot attend. So even though I'm coming here with like hundreds and hundreds of other voices who cannot make the meeting, let alone also have access to a smartphone in that way. So I am asking you, Mayor and City Council members, you are there to serve us. We put you in that place. So please get on your IT people to find a different way that is friendly for folks to meet. And please do not allow this development. We need land. Our children need a place to play. Not all of it. We're not trying to be San Francisco. We're not trying to be even West Jordan. We want a city that is beautiful and reflects brown and black and queer and the not diversity.
Time.
That's
Thank you, Tagielu. Next, we have Henry Owens, followed by Dennis Fuller. Henry, go ahead.
Thank you. Calling in today to talk a little bit about the Pantages Theater. I know everybody on this board, the city council members, the mayor, are really saddened by how this has all kind of gone down. And I know, based on your comments and in speaking with some of you, that this was not the outcome you were hoping for. And so to the public that is listening, know that these people do not want to see this theater go away, but they are dealing with some realities. However, this could have been avoided. And sure, we're not even in the 11th hour, we're in the 15th hour now. And so it's hard to go back on things that have already been done. My request would be that we learn from this experience and put policies and procedures in place that will avoid these obviously horrible outcomes. Again, none of you want to see this theater gone, yet here you are sitting watching it go. And sure, some of those decision makers are no longer in the room, but there are decision makers still in this room that can have an effect going forward in making meaningful change to avoid things like this happening. One of those changes could be, for instance, when a city asset is in our hands, we shouldn't just give it away and give away our leverage. We now have the developer coming back and asking for more money. Anybody who sat from a distance and watched this knew that that was exactly what they were going to do. A future to agree in the future is not an agreement. You do not have, unless it's in writing and ready to roll and you guys are on the same page and it's reduced down to writing, you don't have an agreement in place. And this is exactly what was going to happen. And this could have been avoided. And I ask that we please learn from this experience, and moving forward, we can save those things. The members of the public who want this saved, yep, this one's gone. Look at other projects, look at other things, get involved earlier so that we can avoid having this happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Dennis Fuller, followed by Icona Vai. Dennis, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, awesome. Hi, my name's Dennis Fuller. I grew up in Arizona, but I moved here in 2007 for the snow and the snowboarding and skiing and whatnot. And I stayed for the community and the culture and the arts, and ended up getting married and having kids and stuff. So, I mean, anyways, we're all here because we love Utah and whatnot. I'm a composer, so I make my living off of making music and producing music for other people. Anyways, I wanted to echo some of the other things that like Alexander Wood said earlier about the uniqueness of Utah. I mean, it's not to be an echo chamber for myself, even it's why I've stayed here. It's like we all love it and whatnot. But I'm in favor of trying to save this Pantages Theater. And to be honest, I didn't even know it existed, a couple months ago. I would always walk by the Utah Arts sign, and I was like, that's a cool thing. I wonder why that's still here. But, and then I see these pictures of it and everything, and I'm just blown away at how beautiful this is. It's like a sister theater, obviously, to the Tacoma one and all the other ones. And it's kind of like imagine having Capitol Theater in this place and the Eccles Theater all within a block of each other. We can just have this amazing, flourishing arts district downtown. I mean, the only comparison I want to try and make in the next little bit that I have is imagine all of your guys' favorite albums. I mean, you have Abbey Road and you have Bookends from Simon and Garfunkel, or you have Taylor Swift's new album for all that and whatnot. Imagine if they made those albums and then deleted them from existence and we couldn't hear those anymore. And that's really, being a composer and a musician, that's the only comparison I can really make to us not being able to have this theater again. I mean, we can't repurpose it.
Thank you. And next we have Icona Tavai. Icona, go ahead.
Hello, hi, thank you. Thank you, and Malo Lava, and thank you for allowing me to come on. I am against the Coastal Development Project and Dallin Jolly. But I think like thinking in the past, year 2020 on how many losses like that we had that year, how many lives we lost, and then coming and thinking about 2021, what are we going to do to be able to gain those lives back with the people that we have that are in this world today, living in these areas that we have built communities for many years. You have different generations that are there, and then to develop an area where like you want to take it away from them, and then for them to like struggle because then financially we're not even there, but then we try so hard. And I'm not only speaking about that, but like for the theater, for everybody who's on here, for some reason, like these changes are coming. If we want change, then we will have to like stand up and not fight, but just see what we can do to work things out and understand each other and like be able to talk and have a seat at the table. But thank you, and I hope that you allow that to, you know, soak in your heart, as well as everybody who was in this call today, because there's so many lives that we've lost, and even till this day, 2021, we still have lives that are being lost through racism, through anything that you see out there. So just like, what can we do to do things different and change? And don't build this. Thank you. My time is up.
Madam Chair.
Oh,
Yes,
excuse me,
board member
Council,
Manu.
I'm sorry.
Could I just have a point of personal privilege? And I wanted to clarify that, first of all, that I'm understanding this correctly. To my understanding, Kozo Apartments has no RDA involvement, and that it was approved by the Planning Commission, and the City Council had no decision to make on that. Am I understanding that correctly? Just for my clarification, and also the public, that that's not a project that has any city involvement. It was just an application to the Planning Commission, and the application stopped at Planning Commission and will never come to City Council. Is that accurate?
I would like to ask Danny Walls if you could answer that. If we have any, if the RDA has any involvement with this project.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Director Manu. No, the RDA has no involvement in the Kozo Apartments project.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add on to that comment that my heart goes out to anyone that's losing their house for any reason. And I'm really sorry that that's happening. I understand that that's part of the concern with that project. And I wish there was something that we as the council could do. But in this case, I don't believe that we have any official involvement in that project.
Thank you.
Amanda? Sorry, Madam Chair, can I just add to that really quick?
For sure, go ahead.
If there are any residents on the call or in the meeting that have further questions about the Kozo house, which is in my district, and specifically about displacement or resources to find to relocate to, I've been working with 1 or 2 residents about it, and I'm happy to share that information with other residents as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Wharton. Amanda, would you have the one more
Yes.
speaker? Yeah, thank
We
you.
do have one more speaker, Council. We have Carolyn Lambert. Carolyn, your mic is unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Carolyn Lambert. I would like to speak also towards the preservation of the Utah Pantages Theater. Summing up some well-made comments with more of a passionate pleading for the good of the people and the state, I appreciate the efforts of everyone who has tried and all who are seeking to do what is best and most prudent, and I hope that careful consideration will be given as we move forward and decisions are made. History, beauty, and culture are worth keeping. Our learning from the past and love and care and thoughtful living and grasping and giving light-filled soul and substance, critical to human progress and potential. Preservation is purposeful and provident. Beauty and keeping and care and a bright future and cherished community are a keen concern of mine, with an eye toward the appreciation and preservation of history and protecting love legacy of the past. After eons of wandering the well-traveled road, my family, so grateful to have returned to our unmatched and much-loved homeland, a unique treasure. But we've seen a dramatic rise in less than the most thoughtful development over the past many years that increasingly compromises what makes this area beautiful and desirable. The reasons we moved here: open space, a friendly feel, arts and culture, limited and carefully considered expansion and business development, and a dedication for preserving the history and sense of community here. More conscientious concern for protecting assets and sure splendor would greatly benefit the future of this remarkable region. Best to focus meaningful efforts on extending the resources that encourage residents to settle here in the first place and that will benefit the state from a broader perspective. Preservation and appreciation of local spots, parks, trails, expanding efforts to protect historical treasures. So much of beauty is vanishing in this sweet state where I grew up, with wide open spaces, and the uniqueness and the appreciation of history and learning and culture and community, and those who sacrifice to create the same with love and care. We don't need to follow the current trends to improve. Thank you.
That was our last speaker for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you everybody that took the time to make comments today. We will proceed with our meeting, and we are at item B, which is a public hearing. Individuals may speak to the board once per public hearing topic for 2 minutes. However, written comments are always accepted. And item B1 is a resolution amending the 9-line community reinvestment project area budget. Amanda, do we have anybody that would like to speak to this item?
Yes, I see we have 4 speakers for this item. We have Madison Can, followed by McKenna Taylor, and then Tagielu Vai, and Ikono Tavai. Madison. Let me see if I can find them. Sorry, just 1 second. Oh, Madison is not on the call. So next we have McKenna Taylor. McKenna, go ahead.
Hi there. I think I didn't understand the sign up when you checked what box you wanted to speak for. So I checked both general and this, but I only had a general comment.
Oh, okay, no problem. Thank you. With that, next we have Tagielu Vai. Oh, they're also not on the call. I apologize. I see no more speakers for this item. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Amanda. Then we will move on to item C, redevelopment agency business. We will be briefed about a resolution amending the 9-line community reinvestment project area budget. And at the table, we have Ben Lutke, Danny Walls, Tammy Hansaker, and Lauren Parisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to defer to Ben if he wanted to tee this up. If not, we're happy to jump in.
Just a quick introduction that this is the last step for the RDA board to implement the 9-line project area. So a little bit of good news. The county, the school district, and the city are all participating in the project area. And if the board approves this item today, it will update the budget in the project area plan to reflect the terms and the participation of those 3 taxing entities.
And Madam Chair, I have nothing to add to that introduction other than to say both Tammy and Lauren are available to provide any specific details or answer any questions that board members may have.
All right, so let's open it to the board members. Board members, do you have any questions, clarifications needed for this resolution? Go ahead, Mr. Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. RDA staff, if anybody could just give us a very clear, concise, what's the next step? We've had sort of this going on for a lot of years, as you all know, and you worked hard on this for a long time. If we approve today, what are the subsequent steps till this is ready to be implemented?
I'll jump in and say there are no subsequent steps. This is the final step. We are scheduled to receive our first tax increment from this current tax year, 2021, which we would receive in a year. And with this approval, it would be a fully functioning, fully funded RDA project area that is now open for us to carry out and implement the parts of the plan.
What role do the conditions of the ADU subsidy and the anti-displacement policy have to do in implementation of this project area?
That's a great question. I'll defer to Tammy or Lauren because they can speak to how those relate to some of the conditions within the approvals with the other taxing entities.
And I will turn it over to Lauren. She actually has some presentation slides, if you'd like her to put those up, that actually show the difference in the originally approved budget and the amended budget and what the numbers with the county look like. There were those 3 contingencies built into the county's approval. And once we hit those, it can be an administrative decision by the county to bump our tax increment up from 50% collection to 60% collection. And then at year 10, I believe we have the opportunity to go back to the county once again. It would require county council approval, but that would bump our participation up to 75%. So it's kind of a tiered effect with the county. And we can put those numbers up if that would be helpful.
Madam Chair, I didn't have concerns about the numbers or the details or financial details of the changes. I think we've gone through that, at least on my end. I was more interested in between now and when those policies are ready to be viewed or worked on, what can we do, or are we waiting for those to be done to really implement hard some things, so to speak?
Yeah. No, that's to that question, what we can do is obviously as part of the housing policy that you will hopefully take action on later today, between that and our funding allocation policy, you as a board can guide the agency's efforts and the targeting of those funds to address any concerns or goals that would be in those plans even before they are implemented. So you can set that as a priority right now, that as we work within the area, we are working towards what we hope and anticipate will be included in those plans as policy objectives.
Okay, so so Danny, in order to do that, should we do small group meetings and then get another briefing on this in the near future, or do you
sorry,
work
didn't
on
mean to cut
something
you off, Madam
else?
Chair.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, Tammy can speak to it if you want to get into even more detail, but we anticipate bringing that discussion to the board to set those priorities for the housing allocation funds for next year. And so as part of that conversation, whatever objectives and goals the board would like to infuse into that as we implement those funds, we can certainly include that into the plan at that time.
All right. Board Member Johnston, is that satisfactory to you, or would you like to revisit this in a small group meeting?
I'll revisit the small group meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Anybody else has any comments or questions about this resolution for the 9 line? All right, I don't see anybody's hands. Let me see on my second, maybe. All right. Okay, we're going to move on then to our next item. So we have this one. So we're going to item 2, which is a resolution, revisions to real property disposition and policy follow-up. And once again, at the table, it's Danny and Court.
Madam Chair, before I begin, were we able to get action from the board on the resolution for the budget?
I can do a motion, Madam Chair, if you're interested.
Sure, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I move that the RDA board adopt a resolution amending the 9-line community reinvestment area budget and updating the project area plan.
Second.
Great. So we have a motion by Board Member Johnson and a second by Board Member Mano. I will roll call this. And let's start with Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Johnston.
Yes.
Mr. Wharton.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Dugan.
Yes.
Miss Fowler.
Yes, and I apologize for not being on camera earlier, but I was here and listening to all of the comments. So thank you for that. And yes, I mean,
Thank you, Uno. And then I'm a yes, and this one passes. Are we okay to move on to the next one? I want to make sure that we did that right. Ben? Okay, moving on. We're moving on to the item number 2, resolution revisions to the real property disposition policy follow-up. Danny and Kurt.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is to consider adoption of a resolution revising the agency's real property disposition policy. The proposed revisions include authorizing long-term ground leases as a form of disposition, as well as adding restrictions to how the agency disposes of property to adjacent property owners. This is a follow-up to the briefing in November, and subsequent to that, we've had small group meetings with directors and consulted with legal counsel on these changes. Court can present the specific language for consideration, and we're both available to answer any questions that the board may have. Court, you want to jump on in?
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, as Danny had mentioned, this is a follow-up to our conversation in November. And it seemed like at that time that the first revision that was proposed regarding long-term ground leases, it seems like there was some general support for that, but the board did want to discuss further the portion of the policy related to long-term, or excuse me, related to exclusive negotiations for disposition of property to an adjacent property owner. So we have had some subsequent conversations with board members, as Danny mentioned. Per the policy that exists right now, the RDA can sell or dispose of real property in 2 ways. And just a reminder of that, we do it competitively, which is probably the most common, and that's typically through a request for proposals or a request for qualifications. But we can, per the policy, also exclusively negotiate for the sale of a property, but only if one of 6 criteria is met. And one of those criteria is disposition to an adjacent property owner to facilitate redevelopment objectives as defined in the project area strategic plan. The language that we have discussed adding to that is, and it's in your packet in red line form, it'd just be 1 sentence, and it would say, if the property being disposed of is a tier 1 property, the price shall be at least 90% of the fair market value as determined by the disposition price protocol. So the full proviso then in the policy would say you can do a disposition to an adjacent property owner to facilitate redevelopment objectives as defined in the project area strategic plan. If the property being disposed of is a tier 1 property, the price shall be at least 90% of the fair market value. So as we discussed that, we sort of felt like that did a number of things. One was ensure that the agency receives fair compensation for its most premier properties, those tier 1 properties, and any exclusive negotiation with an adjacent property owner. We also felt like that it prevents the circumstance that comes up sometimes in which developers try to acquire an agency tier 1 property at a discount by going out and acquiring a property adjacent to it, and then subsequently requesting to exclusively negotiate with the agency. Just sort of would cut out that whole process. And then lastly, we feel like it sort of retains some flexibility. We're still able to exclusively negotiate with adjacent property owners for tier 2 properties. And I think that is important because it is an important tool from time to time as we're disposing of properties to be able to work with a neighboring property owner. And this would preserve the ability to do that with tier 2 properties. So that's really the edit, kind of the revision to the revision, if you will, presented in November. And Madam Chair, if it's helpful, I can go back and review the whole long-term ground lease changes to the policy as well. I'll leave that up to you.
We are a little bit behind on schedule. Board members, would you like that for clarification? Or should we just talk about things in general for this item? If you're a yes, I don't see anybody's hands up. So thanks, Court. So then I will open it up to discussion if anybody else has more questions about it, or if we're ready to adopt this resolution for the property disposition, we can move forward as well.
Madam Chair, I have one quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
Would Utah Theater be considered a tier 1 property?
Yes.
And which of the 4 qualifications would have made it that? Because it's not 2 acres, is it?
It's not too late to
not acres. Sorry, I'm just looking at the definition of tier 1 property and I'm trying to figure out what would make that a tier 1 property. I can get the answer offline.
I think that one qualified under the fact that it was called out specifically within city plans and goals.
That's what I was going to say.
I see. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Any
Madam
other?
Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to ask a scenario about the 90% fair market value for tier 1 properties for sale. Help me understand where there's some historical precedent, I'm guessing, for that 90% threshold versus 100% or some other number. Help me understand that.
Yeah. Oh, Court, you want to jump in, please?
I was just going to say that the 90% number is tied in precedent. That exists in the policy now in the disposition price protocol when we sell properties. So the administration has the ability to discount up to 10% of a discount, and anything beyond that has to come back to the board for approval. So that's where the 90% number is sort of tied to within the policy right now. And it's just based in the kind of notion that in a real estate transaction, you need a bit of wiggle room. Items come up sometimes during due diligence or in the negotiation process where you need to negotiate a little bit more on the price.
It's sort of, I'm trying to put this in real sort of experience here, because tier 1 are really our most valuable, largest, most prominent properties for the most part, I'm assuming here. We may want to look at a tighter threshold to come back to the board for discussion on these things. I don't know what the other board members think. I think these are going to be high profile cases, and I'd hate to see us do a discount for reasonable reasons, Court. I mean, obviously negotiations and things, especially due diligence, without having a good explanation for the public in some instances. That's what I'm sort of thinking through. Are there downside? I know there's a downside about being able to realistically negotiate real time. If you have to come back for more discussion about this, is there a way we could figure out a viable mechanism to keep people appraised if we're going to lower the cost of a property, so it doesn't come back to sort of haunt people later on?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think you have that mechanism within the policy now, that is a requirement of staff to come to the board and present a land disposition plan before we offer property. And within that plan is where we would divulge to whatever extent we are proposing to either discount the property or to what extent the board may need to approve a discount. And so that's kind of that announcement of prior to us either marketing a property or closing on a property. That is the public presentation of what the plan is, and then that allows for comment and any input from the board. Going back to the 10%, as Court said, I think that, we probably don't hit that threshold very often. If we're going to do a discount on a property for something like affordable housing or true public benefit, chances are that's going to far exceed that 10%, and it's going to come back before you for approval. That 10%, as Court said, that if we're truly looking at acquiring a property or doing an exchange with an existing property owner, That's really just to provide a little bit of flexibility in doing so, whether those are, who pays for some of the due diligence and site costs, who pays for closing costs. It's not meant to be a significant amount of money that becomes a bargaining chip in the negotiation, as much as just provide us as the administration the flexibility we need, just so that if it's $1 less than fair market value, we don't have to come and get board approval. We can operate within this policy and know exactly where that limitation is before we need to come and get approval.
I'm not trying to be a miser, Madam Chair, necessarily, although maybe I just am. Part of my thinking, how often do we revisit this policy, I guess? Because right now in the current market, I would hate to see us go very low at all in anything because it's escalating so quickly. I know in a few years it may change. How often do we revisit this policy, I guess? Or what's the intention? Maybe the RDA staff sort of, when you go into negotiations, we sort of trust you're doing highest and best value. It's all the effort you can, but how often do we revisit this policy based on economic factors outside of us?
I believe the policy was adopted in 2016 or 2017.
2016.
And this is the first time we've come back and revisited. And the primary purpose for revisiting it at this time was, one, to provide the option so moving forward we can make sure we're real clear that leases are included as part of that disposition. And then two, it was done at the request of council members as part of looking at the Utah Theater deal, which I think it's important to note that, the initial discussion on Utah Theater came about before this policy was in place. And so, doing these changes now is kind of that update of looking back. How can we kind of update it and make sure that it's relevant to how we're looking at some of our more recent deals?
Yeah. Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, Board Member Wharton.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was one of the louder voices on this, and because I think so much of the frustration that we've heard from the public about the Utah Theater is that they feel like this exception in RDA's policies didn't give them the transparency that they want and that I think that they deserve. And so after several discussions, I feel satisfied that this fulfills. At that time, the RDA board made a commitment that we would revisit this policy and bring forth the kind of transparency that the public wanted to see, and that we would be accountable, as one of the callers even said today, to learn from this whole situation. And I think there are lots of lessons to be learned. But I feel like this does satisfy that commitment. And I do want to thank RDA staff for going back and making changes to it after you came to us with the first one, and I didn't feel like it fulfilled that commitment. But I wanted to give you just another opportunity to kind of speak to it I don't want this to be like just about the Utah Theater, but in a lot of ways it is. So if Danny or Court want to kind of speak to that, like in the context of the Utah Theater and in the context of the commitment that we made, but also recognizing that the Utah Theater was a very unique situation. I just wanted to, if you would comment on that, more for the benefit of the public who hasn't been a part of the deliberations, and why you think that this iteration of the policy does fulfill that commitment.
Thank you, and thank you for your appreciation of our efforts. I think one of the first things with the Utah Theater, as this policy would relate to it, is there probably would have been more discussions up front in terms of us presenting what the proposed disposition plan was for the theater and entering those initial negotiations with the adjacent property owner. So that would have been done as part of that land disposition policy, or not policy, that land disposition presentation and strategy. And that would have begun the public comment or the initial public presentation of the property and the project. So that probably would have really addressed a lot of the public's concerns that this wasn't, being done outside of the public eye. But I think the biggest thing that this proposed change makes is that if we as an agency are going to negotiate with an adjacent property owner, that the only way to do that is if it is sold at 90% or above of fair market value. And so to the extent with Utah Theater, where that was a land discount that was in exchange for the public benefits of affordable housing, the mid-block walkway, and preservation of the elements, with this, we would not have been able to discount the property as part of negotiating exclusively with the adjacent property owner. So the result would have been that it would have been put out to market. Obviously, we probably still would have identified those public benefits of what we wanted to accomplish with the disposition, and Hines, I anticipate, would fully respond as they do, but it would also give the opportunity to others, if they wanted to, have the opportunity to bid on it, they could have.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Danny. Anybody else would like to speak to this item? Okay. Danny, you need us to some action from us. Yes?
Yes, this item is consideration for approving the resolution.
All right. Do we have that? We have a motion and the motion sheet.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the resolution.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Board Member Rogers and a second by Board Member Fowler. We're gonna roll call. Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Wharton?
Yes.
Mano?
Yes.
Dugan?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Now that passes. We're going to move on to, sorry, we're running super behind schedule, so there are some items, 1 or 2 items that we might have to bump, but if we can do number 3, the Housing Development Loan Program follow up in 5 minutes, that would greatly help us so that we don't have to bump somebody else. So, is that okay, Danny? And
Yeah,
we have
no,
Danny, Allison, and Tammy.
that is great. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is a resolution for the board's consideration. And essentially, this is following up on the recent approval of the RDA Housing Allocation Funds Policy. This is the next step in creating a centralized housing development resource within a formalized program. Tammy's been working on this and is the expert on it. We're happy to do any level of presentation, or if it's at the wish of the board, we can just jump right into questions and follow up as part of that.
Madam Chair, I have a few slides with some of the text revisions if you want me to display those.
Let's jump right to it.
Okay. Let me fast forward. Oops, I went too far. So the first revision, if you remember from last month, the policy has a set of intent statements that are pretty broad in nature. And then the idea is to come back to the board each year and identify an annual funding strategy with more specific policy objectives. So based on feedback from the board, we included the text in purple to clarify that we want to support affordable housing for various household sizes ranging from single person to families. The next revision was adding a new intent statement that reads, support an array of scale of project types, including detached housing, accessory dwelling units, row houses, and small to large scale multifamily buildings that contribute to neighborhood context and livability. This was in direct response to some feedback from Director Mano. Another revision that is now included in the policy is a new section on loan modifications. And we basically copied this from the existing RDA loan program policy. This lays out an administrative process for us to defer or forbear payments for up to 1 year. which the RDA actually utilized through our loans through the RDA loan program with the COVID crisis. If it's any longer than a year, it would have to go back to the board for approval, and any sort of loan write-down requested due to economic hardship would have to go to the board. We also modified a few of the underwriting guidelines, added some clarifying language. One of these clarifications is that affordable housing funding shall be sized in proportion to the affordable component. So if we're incentivizing or funding mixed income buildings, we want to make sure that's in proportion to the affordable units, and we're not over committing resources that would go to the market rate units. We also modified the base interest rate, that rather than being a static interest rate, it's tied to the US Treasury yield curve rate with a maximum cap. So that will allow it to follow market trends within reason. We built in that cap, so if interest rates do go up quite high, we don't want to be a burden on these affordable housing projects. And then clarification on the affordability restriction. We wanted to clarify that it's both rent and income. The RDA does this anyway, but just to be extra upfront and transparent, we're not just restricting rents, we're also requiring that developers income qualify families going into these units. So we're making sure the units are going to households that actually need the affordable housing. And then we did modify, we changed the affordability period for home ownership from 30 years to 15 years. And that was based on feedback from a national affordable housing consultant who felt like with a shared equity model for home ownership, 30 years was a little long for that model. And most communities around the country have a little bit of a shorter time period for those shared equity models and home ownership. And that's the bulk of the changes in the policy. The policy resolution has been approved as to form, and it's in your packet if you would like to make action on it today. I would also like to say that it did go to the Redevelopment Advisory Committee earlier this month, and they unanimously voted to recommend approval of the policy as presented.
Great. Thank you so much, Tammy. Board members, we don't have a lot of time, but if you have comments or any question or suggestion that it's imperative, please go ahead and let us know now. I cannot see anybody's hand. No. I only have one question on the size of the, I'm not sure if it said size of the household or it said single persons to families. And I think this is something that Director Dugan talked about or requested, and I think I was interested too. When we say families, will we consider a two-person household a family? So I'm not sure if we need to clarify, we're looking for housing for families, that will accommodate families of more than two people, more than 3 or 4. And I'm not sure if that's at this point that needs to be clarified at this point, or it's a policy thing later. Go ahead, Tammy.
We could add language on the end of that sentence that reads families of various sizes. On an annual basis, that's where we will be setting the funding priorities for that year. And that's where we can get more specific, like prioritize bedrooms of 3 to 4 bedrooms, get more specific with the unit type, but these are more general priorities that will live with the policy over time. But we could add families of various sizes on the end of that sentence.
I would like that. Let's do that. So you need also for us to adopt this resolution today, correct?
If you're comfortable.
If we're comfortable. So board members, do I have a motion or more discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
I move that we approve the policy, resolution, ordinance, any of the 3 that it may be.
Resolution.
Thank you. The resolution at this time.
Second.
with that, the wording that Tammy mentioned.
Yes. So we have a resolution to approve, we have a motion to approve this resolution with the language that Tammy mentioned earlier. The motion was by Director Fowler and seconded by Mano. Nope. Was it Johnston? I didn't hear you guys. I'm sorry.
Either Rogers or it doesn't really matter.
Was it Rogers? Okay. And was seconded by Rogers. Roll call. Rogers.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Wharton.
Yes.
Mano.
Yes.
Dugan.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and it passes unanimously. We're on item number 4. And as a reminder to what I already mentioned, this next briefing on the Utah Theater is focused on the green open space the board required as part of the proposed project. We're going to go on, work on this one, and hopefully we can do this in 15 minutes or less, and we are going to have to move item number 5 to the April meeting. Okay. So item number 4, updates on sales price in terms of the Utah Theater and adjacent retail property at 144 South Main Street. Then Danny, Dusty, and Daniel, which are the folks from Hines Development. It's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll turn it over to Tammy here in a second to run through the presentation. And then Dusty Harris and Daniel Stevens are available from Hines Development for any questions. As you've stated, this is a presentation of information to fulfill the contingency that was included as part of the board approval of the sales terms. Specifically, this addresses the open space contingency that was defined by the board as part of that approval. So Tammy's got some slides that she can go through quickly, and then we can obviously open up to any questions of staff or the representatives from Hines as the board desires.
All right, thanks, Danny. I think we've all seen this map several times, the Utah Theater on Main Street. The Kearns building owned by Hines is to the north of the property. The background we also went through last month, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. The RDA acquired the property in 2010. It spent several years exploring different reuse and preservation options. In 2019, with Hines acting as the lead developer, Hines proposed, rather than preserving the theater, the construction of a mixed-use tower that is approximately 370 feet high with commercial and residential uses. That includes affordable housing, public space, repurposing of theater elements, structured parking, and public art. So it was in 2019, the RDA and Hines entered into a purchase and sell agreement that outlines the terms and conditions of the sale. This is an active contract that the parties are continuing to work under. So the board's role in this deal was the land write-down that was approved by the board on December 3rd of 2019. The board approved the resolution authorizing these sales pricing terms with the public benefits of affordable housing with a minimum of 10% of the units restricted to between 60 and 80% AMI. Hines is moving forward with this. They have a mix of studio, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom affordable units, a mid-block walkway that extends from Main Street to the open space, and historic repurposing of theater elements. In addition to those 3 public benefits I just outlined, the RDA board put 2 additional contingencies on, which we have spoken about today, so I won't go into a lot of detail. The historic documentation contingency that was fulfilled in February. So today, the last contingency that needs to be addressed pursuant to the board's resolution is the open space. So we're here to present plans for the open space. The board also indicated in their resolution that prior to closing, the board of directors could consider providing additional incentives to the developer or through the city council related to the open space. That was contemplated by the board. There is not an additional funding request moving forward today, so this is just informational. The open space contingency, as I just said, if the board wants to provide direction to further explore enhanced design elements, we can work with Hines on what that would look like as contemplated through the board's contingency. But by submitting this information, the parties can proceed to closing on the property once contractual obligations are fulfilled. So getting into the project design, here's the revised and updated design of the tower. Here's a list of the uses. It's 368 feet, 31 stories, contains a mix of amenity space, retail, and commercial. There's an amenity deck and different outdoor spaces for residents and visitors to experience. Here's another view of the tower and the park space. In looking at the park space, we've really talked a lot with Hines about utilizing a public-private model of furthering park space in Salt Lake City is a great way to leverage the city's limited resources for new park space. There's actually, looking at national average, Salt Lake City has 8% of its land use going towards parks and recreation, whereas the national average, I believe, is 15%. So we're behind a lot of other cities in open space and park space amenities for residents. In gathering inspiration for the open space and the mid-block connection leading to the open space, Hines and their architect team looked at other communities and other examples of great public spaces. An important component was to provide visual and physical connections. The mid-block walkway actually aligns pretty closely with the street crossing and Regent Street across Main Street for that connectivity there. They looked at providing opportunities for people to gather and socialize. We all know and likely have visited the High Line in New York City. A place that provides various types of social activities, giving people a reason to come to the space and return to the space. This is a public space in Philadelphia. A place that is comfortable, safe, and clean with a unique identity. An example of a public space that they drew inspiration from in Philadelphia. Another one in Chicago. And then they also looked at ways to incorporate elements for children and families. This is a playground in Canada and one in New York City. So in looking at the current design, working within the current project budget, they were able to factor a lot of these elements into the design. Here is a view from Main Street with the mid-block connection, which will have a public easement, terraced and going up to the open space. The elevator currently is tucked around next to the building, so the park space will be ADA accessible. And here is a view of the park space, providing a lot of those elements I talked about, places for people to gather and socialize, various places for different activities. The numbers for the park are 2.5 million, combining hard and soft costs into the construction of the park, and then about $69,000 annually for operating and maintenance. This will be fully borne by the project without any additional incentive from the RDA. If the board wishes to talk about additional design features, that could be done at a later date, but with this design, it is fully covered by the project. There will be a public easement recorded on both the park space and the mid-block connection. This public easement will provide time, place, and manner restrictions, which will not impede on First Amendment rights. but regulate when, where, and how the public may engage with the space. This is similar to what we have through city ordinance on city-owned parks. So I believe that is the end of the presentation. And as Danny mentioned, Hines representatives are here if you have specific questions for them.
So board members, do we have questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I guess I've never actually seen a ground floor plan that, to my memory, and so I'm not sure where the mid-block crossing is, and I'm wondering some information about the main public lobby, if that's accessible to the public, or how that that ground floor space functions. Is the walkway actually up the stairs, or is there a separate walkway?
I'm happy to answer that, Tam, if you'd like me to. The walkway is up the stairs up to the open space. And then as Tammy mentioned, there's a space between the stairwell and the building that would take you back to the elevator and make it ADA accessible. The building lobby is intended for the residents of the building.
So there's actually no way to get from this block to anywhere else besides the public open space? Or is there another, does it connect to anything, I guess is the question.
Well, there will be stairwell and elevator access off the west side of the parking structure as well. So if you're coming from West Temple, you could take stairs or elevator up the garage to the open space as well.
So you could go up the stairs to the open space and then down another set of stairs or elevator to West Temple?
Yeah. Yes.
And Director Mono, that structure was always contemplated through the project design. Even in 2019, when it came before the board before, the mid-block walkway was intended to be a connection to that open space.
Yeah, I guess, and this may be a slightly different topic than this project specifically, but in my mind, the public benefit of mid-block crossways to allow people to go through the city in different ways and make shortcuts through our giant blocks. And to me, if I have to walk up a set of stairs and then back down another set of stairs and or elevator, it's not really a functional way to walk through a city. So, and I understand that this, you know, the reasons for the write down and everything were all prior to my time on the board, but I guess for me, the intent of a public walkway is slightly different than a connection to a destination. It's actually a connection through a space, and this feels like a very difficult connection through a space.
I think if I could chime in, that's a great comment, and I think you're right, Director Mono, that this is more or less providing connections to the open space as an amenity in the interior of the block, while still obviously providing a way to connect West Temple to Main Street. I think it's worth noting that we would not be able to provide any connection to West Temple, but for the involvement of Hines and the property that they're utilizing that is currently part of the Kearns Building parking structure. That the Utah Theater property itself has zero public access, with the exception of limited vehicular access through the parking structure off of 2nd South. So as a parcel on its own, we would not be able to provide mid-block connectivity to West Temple or anything in the interior of the block, but for the utilization of the additional property that Hines is providing. And so granted, that's, you know, to the structure of, you know, the parking structure and the park above, but that is something that is not currently available and was part of the original design as Tammy anticipated. So our goal is to try to provide access and how we could and incorporate that as part of the open space on the roof.
Yeah, I believe Hines will be leveraging their property. About half of the parking structure and park space will actually be on the current Kearns Building property. So we're leveraging the adjacent property for this park space.
And that's what provides that ability to have that elevator and stairwell in that northwest corner that connects to West Temple.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess just for future projects, if it's something where I feel like we're promising a public benefit of a public walkway, to me it would have to be more usable for future projects. If we're saying this is a way to get to me, a walkway is the way to get through the city, not to get to a destination like a park. So this doesn't meet my understanding of what the public, when I was a member of the public and not a board member, felt like I was being promised by a public walkway. So I'll just leave it at that.
Great. Anybody else? Any other comments or questions, concerns?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I know we were going to have a maybe different discussion about additional design elements, but current design elements, is there time to talk about that now, or is it a different place?
Danny, to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. The item today is to meet the board's obligation of presenting the information of how the developer would provide the open space, make it accessible, and the information on the cost, which they are at this level of improvements bearing that entire cost for both the construction and the maintenance. If the board wishes to direct staff to continue conversations with the developer and discuss options for what those additional enhancements could be and what the additional cost would be, we certainly can do that and then bring a proposal back to the board for that consideration. But we can continue to have those conversations both with the board and the developer as they continue to design the property and work towards closing, as well as they finalize those design plans, if that's something the board would like us to do.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
I'm not necessarily interested in the enhanced design elements, Danny. Just to be blunt, we've got so many needs and so little money. I'd hate to put more here when I can see 15 other things that we need to do. But my concern with the current design is we've talked about activating it. I got to have a better sense about how it would be activated. Lunchtime activation, evening, whatever it is, activation. Give me an understanding of that. The second piece is we had a slide earlier to sort of trying to design kid-friendly stuff. I need some more clarification on what is kid-friendly here, particularly for handicapped kids. I know we can get up there in the elevator, but once you're up there, some information about how we're going to do that in the current cost design process. Those things would be interesting for me to hear sooner than later.
Okay, we can certainly follow up with the board on how Hines may or may not include those in further, designs of the space. Those uses were exactly what was anticipated both in the original PNS and I think by the board when they approved this contingency of if we wanted those type of enhancements, then to what extent would we as an agency or city want to potentially participate to make this have those improvements that would kind of have it give that feel of a little bit more of a city park, and whether that's a stronger tot lot, whether that's stronger ADA accessibility, or whether that takes it to the limit of programming. I think for us as a city and an agency, if we were to ask for those at this time, then I think we would probably be wanting to submit a proposal for how we could help fund those along with the developer.
I'm not asking for that, Danny, but the slides earlier saying, here's the design elements we were inspired by perhaps across the country. Those are not reflected here. And so that's okay if it costs more and we have to say it costs more to do those, but I don't want to present that to the public in any way if we're not going to do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I'm not saying we have to have a slide or a kid's playground there. If this is a different park based on the cost we have, that's fine. But what I'm seeing here does not reflect, I think, with the initial design. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does. And that's the balance between what, as we presented, those are the types of parks and uses that, were kind of the original inspiration for the design. I think what we've presented today is a pretty good idea of what Hines is looking to build. Obviously, I'm sure they'll probably make some, adjustments and refinements to that. And as those kind of get, decided upon, we're happy to bring those back to the board and present those, as an update. But a lot of that is just probably going to be refined as further design happens on the space.
Danny, I think I have the same concerns as Andrew, and this presentation, because of the lack of not clarity, I don't know how to say this. Like, we don't have really specifics about the park. We only know how much it's going to cost for them. don't feel that that fulfills this come back to the board and show us your plans and the you know, and the price, and then we can move forward with the purchase sale agreement. Because again, like Andrew said, we're just presented one image of what it could be and how much it costs, and then where we got the inspiration, which doesn't reflect on the one image that we have. So I think the intent, you know, of the board back in the day to say, hey, we want to see, you know, plans for this park and you know, and make it family friendly and you know, accessible, or whatever the intent was, to see something that it could be usable for everybody. And I don't know that this one image, one rendering is what we're gonna get, or do we need to continue talking about it and see the actual renderings of the final?
Yeah, it's a great question. I realize there's a little bit of nuance in the answer, and Allison can jump in from a legal standpoint of how we, you know, are responding to the language within the contingency. This is not something that was anticipated that needed approval from the board, as much as this is, you know, the board building off of what we had in the original purchase and sale agreement, which was the option to continue to work with the developer to explore if we as a city wanted this to be a public park and wanted to have a higher level and enhanced improvements. And so the language within the contingency simply states that we would return with the plans and the costs and the maintenance impact if we as a city or an agency wanted to consider putting additional money into it to have it be more of a true city park. It's been made clear to us that we don't necessarily want to pursue that option of having this be either a city-owned park or a city-maintained park, or that the city wants to necessarily put additional money into this because of all the reasons the board have stated is, you know, we have greater concerns and needs. And so from the standpoint of meeting this contingency, the developer has provided that information. We have stated that we're not interested in further participation or any of the enhanced improvements or paying for them. And so the developer has met what those contingencies are in terms of they've provided the plans, they've indicated what the cost would be for that enhanced design, and they've provided the cost for what the maintenance would be. It doesn't necessarily need board approval, especially since, you know, to Heinz's credit, they have stepped up and said, we will provide the ability for this to be publicly accessible space, which is exactly what the intention was with the original language, and the board's contingency was to ensure that this wasn't just an amenity for the residents. So Heinz has agreed to make it accessible to the public, provide the mid-block connection, and Heinz has further agreed to take on the entire amount of maintenance for this space as public space. And so what we're trying to say is, if we do want to go above and beyond what Heinz has stepped up and agreed to pay for and maintain, then I would assume that we would want to do that in the form of a proposal of, here's exactly what a different level could be that you would want to pursue, and to what extent would we want to consider funding that at an additional participation level at that point. But for the statement of the original board's intention, we feel that Heinz has gone above and beyond what we as a city and an agency have asked them to provide within this space. And all we were asking for was the option to explore doing more. And if we don't want to do more, then I think to Heinz's credit, they have met the contingency and then some in terms of ensuring that it's accessible to the public, and they are maintaining it on their dime and placing time, place, and manner restrictions on their own property.
Okay, Wharton and then Rogers. Thank you. Hear you. We can't hear you, Chris.
Sorry. This question is for Danny and for the mayor. Are there any other properties in Salt Lake or projects in Salt Lake where the city is being offered like public access and using it as some sort of public attraction, like a park, where a third party, like a business, is offering to pay for the maintenance of that attraction?
I can't think of any. I can think of many in other parts of the country. And it's
Mhm.
really the parks that stand out in the, the national mind, great parks around the country. And I'll just leave it at that. But Madam Chair, if I could make a follow-up comment after Danny answers, I'd appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just add real quickly that the only other project I can think of is the agency's project on State Street, where we asked the developer to provide a mid-block connection to Floral Street, and that mid-block connection is going to have a easement along with all the restrictions on it, and that consideration for that easement and that mid-block connection was also part of the justification for the write-down on that property as well. But there is no active park space or anything more than just a designed mid-block connection.
Is that the
Okay,
Grand
so-
Shores?
Yeah.
Okay.
So follow-up question. Let's just pretend that the city property where the theater is just undeveloped. It's just a big lot. Is there any, with all the other properties around it, is there any access to that lot except on Main Street?
The only other access that the Utah Theater property has is limited vehicular access for the 8 parking stalls on the south side of the Utah Theater property that are accessed by the parking structure that comes off of 2nd South.
Which we don't own.
Which we don't own. We have an access agreement with that group.
Okay. How long, sorry, I just have, I think, only one more question. How long has Salt Lake City, the council or the mayor been, I mean, I know it's been a priority since I've been on the council, so 3 years and some months. How long has the downtown park been a serious objective of the mayor and council?
That's a great question. I would assume it predates my time back with the agency. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even referenced in more of the city's master plans or downtown rising plans, but I can't speak to that with any level of certainty.
Well, how long have you been involved with the city?
3.5 years.
Okay. And how much money total but you were involved before that, right?
Yeah, I left the city from 2004 to 2017.
So in 2004 to 2017, were people also asked, was there conversations at that time about wanting to get a downtown park?
That I don't know.
Okay. And
I should also note that even though this open space is going to be built as part of the project, Hines will fund it, Hines will maintain it. At this point, Hines will also still pay probably over $1 million in park impact fees for the construction of parks. So they're providing space on their property as well as contributing to the park impact fee fund.
I believe it's 1.2 million in impact fees for parks.
Okay, and okay, so I guess I do have more than one question. So when the council and the mayor, I say we, but realize that might have been before my time, we're prioritizing the creation of a downtown park. Can you remind me how much money we had been able to accumulate to go towards that effort? My recollection is it was about 3 million.
It
Three
was
and a half.
the mayor's correct. It was 3.5 million, but only 2 million was to purchase land for a park. The rest was to actually develop amenities in the park. And the city was not successful in finding space that was at least an acre in size. That was what Public Services recommended. And so given the lack of available spaces and the $2 million constraint, we were not successful in finding a downtown location for a new park.
Okay.
Jordan, if I could interrupt for a moment, I got a text saying that the idea for a public open space downtown dates back to the 1995 downtown master plan, as well as the second century plan.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking is because all this was at the forefront of my mind when we had these discussions before. And my recollection from that discussion is, well, from what I said specifically, is that if we are in a position where we have to lose something iconic, like like this theater, I want to gain something iconic. And I want to gain something that if we're going to lose something that's a public space that's accessible to the public, I want to gain something. So in my mind, I understand that there's what we want and what would be ideal, but I mean, what our job is as council members is to operate in the art of the possible and to leverage what we can as best we can with the opportunities that are in front of us. And if I understand there are a lot of needs around the city and I want to be sensitive to that. I'm not saying that we should, that, you know, this should be our primary focus or our only focus or anything like that. But if this is their only, if we've been trying this long to get a downtown park, we've been, and this is as close as we've ever come. And we've never had the kind of offer in terms of a financial partner that we have now. And we want to make something that is worthy of this location that, you know, was a public space for so long. And we have a project that is very rare in that where, you know, we make a one-time investment to have more amenities in the park, and then a private company is going to take on the responsibility for maintaining that in the future. I don't know why we would not direct staff to further investigate that and to bring us not just one option or two options, but a number of options that we can consider, that the public can weigh in on, that can tell us what they would be interested in seeing in that place. I mean, so for me, this is like a no-brainer. Why would we not have that discussion? Why would we not direct staff to do that work?
Okay, noted.
I'm with you, Chris.
All right.
Oh,
I think the
Madam Chair.
mayor, I think, okay, James and then the mayor, please. Thanks.
Yeah, board member Wharton, I appreciate that because that was a lot nicer than I was going to be. We have been going round and round and round with this. This is year 8 for me in regards to this, and I've seen a dozen different projects. This is the only one that has stuck. This is the only one that has the public amenities that we're looking for. This is the only one that has ever come to us that we really can say, oh yeah, this actually makes sense. It gives us access to another street that we've never had before. It puts property tax back into the pool for the city. I mean, this is a win-win-win. This is the current way that we're doing this, going round and round, is a lose-lose scenario. We're continually losing. And I'm sorry that people, this might be a little bit harsh, that they think it's iconic. I'm sorry, I've been in there. I've almost fallen through in there. It's been stripped. It's been gutted. There's nothing historic about it that once was there before. And the only thing we can do is recreate what's there anyway. And that's what we're planning on doing through this. So yeah, I am 100%. I'd prove it today and say whatever money we were going to allocate towards the park, let's throw that towards the going out to the public and let them figure out how they want to have the money spent on that park. But I'm all for moving forward immediately. Let's get moving and stop dragging our feet. I feel like, and I don't mean this to be offensive, but we have, once we have new members on the board, we're dragging our feet, not only now, but we're doing it on the council as well. And we're playing a little bit of catch up, and I understand that, but to what point? It's to our own detriment. We're falling all over ourselves in order to try to look at this or look at that, when we know it's there. We've heard it from staff. We've heard it time and time and time again, and throwing it back at staff to come back with something else, to come back with something else. We're going to just play this merry-go-round again and again and again. And I'm done. We need to move on.
Noted. Thank you, James. Mayor?
I'm happy to let the council members go. I saw Councilmember Fowler's hand up. And you're basically making the points I wanted to make.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also really appreciate the way that you led that conversation, Chris. It felt very much like a good cross-examination, and but getting to those points that have been made that I was hoping also to make. You know, one thing we have to remember is that $3.5 million for a downtown park didn't include the ongoing maintenance that it would have cost us. And that was part of the problem with trying to find both the space and the funding. So having a private entity, and as we saw, cities all over the country are leaning more towards public-private partnerships in order to create public spaces. Okay, say that eight times fast. To create these public spaces, because we do have limited resources, and we've seen over the last, as Chris pointed out, the 4 years, 3.5, 4 years we've been on the council, but 8 or plus years beyond, or 4 or plus years beyond that, that we haven't capitalized on these private public partnerships. And here is an opportunity for us to do it, where somebody would be maintaining that open space. I would also point out that in those 8+ years that we were looking for a downtown park, the Utah Theater stood boarded up. So it wasn't accessible to the public either. And so for at least a decade, if not longer, we had a space that was there that wasn't accessible to the public in really any sort of way. And then we also couldn't find more open space to create something open to the public. And here we have that. So I'm very much in favor of exploring more amenities and seeing what we can do with that space. It's not, there are a lot of things. I think Mr. Owens said it earlier during the general comment. There are a lot of things about the whole deal and losing the theater that I think every single person on this call right now, probably including Dusty, would have liked to say, yeah, it's a shame we are losing this theater. But that happened way before any of us sitting here today. And I think in some ways what we're all trying to do is make lemonade out of some lemons that we were handed. And this is an excellent way to do this. And I do appreciate that not often do we have developers willing to come back over and over and over again and work with us in the way that I think has happened here. Is it everything we would have wanted? No, of course, I think everyone would have wanted to save the theater. Is this an opportunity for us to really capitalize on a relationship and on a partnership? I do believe that it is. And I believe that it can be something that is iconic and open to the public, and that people will say, this is as cool as the New York 9 line. Maybe not as long, but that this is a space that we want to go and hang out. So I'm all for looking and exploring amenities in that park.
All right, go ahead, Mayor. And after that, I think we need to wrap up. Go ahead.
Yes, and to council members Wharton, Rogers, Fowler. And I've felt the pain over the 8 years that I've been in these conversations. And we've asked, what was Preservation Utah, which is now even a new name and a new director. They tried to fly or bring a fundraising campaign up a flagpole and really couldn't even touch a fraction of the vanilla shell cost that was estimated. We visited other Pantages theaters around the country, and it's really not an apples to apples comparison to say it was this much to restore this one, so it should be that much to restore this one. The amount of degradation in this Pantages, former Pantages theater is significant, and it is significantly more than other theaters that were considered in all of the evaluations that have happened over the last near decade. And to Councilmember Rogers' point, I did fall through the floor. I fell through the floor up to my hips in this building. It is very far gone. It's not a good space. And yet we were willing as an RDA to invest tens of thousands of dollars in analysis and studies and different proposals and ask the public, which is how Preservation Utah came to the conversation at the time, help us figure out how we could save this place. Help us figure out how we can have enough money to do it. And it's a painful process, but I think cutting off our nose to spite our face at this point is such a loss for the residents downtown, because we can't afford a downtown park. We've been trying a long time, and the 1.2 million in parks impact fees that will be generated by the project itself are just the parks impact fees. This project is going to generate fees for streets replacement, and for other utilities and things that we shouldn't be paying for, and it's good for growth to pay for that. So we'll see the benefit in other parks around the community. Thanks for giving me a second, Madam Chair.
No problem. Thank you. Oh, okay. We're so behind. I want to apologize to the person that is waiting for us. Go ahead, Board Member Johnston.
My first comment was about the park space, not about the project. I want to be careful about that. The contingency was an agreement we had. And it was an agreement that said prior to closing, the developer provide a detailed plan for the open space. So we need to know, are these the detailed plans, the rendering of what we can expect? If we want to go out to a larger process to talk about other options for it, okay. But that's my question, because I asked about handicap access based on the design I see right now. And so there's detailed questions in the design. That's what I was asking. Are we talking about that here, or do we need a further discussion about the details for that detailed plan for the open space as part of this contingency, Danny? Being that.
Understood. I appreciate that clarification, and I can have Allison jump in too to provide any interpretation on the language. As we have presented it, we have done so in a way that the plans that are presented, the renderings, meet the qualifications of the intention. And as I said, the reason for that is because we read that intent language from the board stating that we want the opportunity to have these conversations with the developer about enhancing what they are already proposing to do as open space. And so given that the conversations we've had with board members to date have not necessarily concluded that you all wanted to consider additional enhancements, we feel like we've met that condition by coming in and saying the open space that the developer has proposed to build from day one, this is what it's going to look like. These are the renderings, and that we don't need to really get into specific detailed plans because the developer is willing to pay for it all, make it available to the public, and maintain it, which, as I said, those were the motivations of both the original PNS and that board contingency was, if we want to put money into it, then at that point, we would want to have those conversations of specifically what that park space would look like and what those details would be. So if we're not going to go into that side of the conversation of participating and providing additional funds, then we default back to what the developer has always said, that they're going to build open space. They have now said that they're willing to make that open space accessible to the public, pay for it on their dime, and maintain it. So we read that to where we would only get into more specifics and the enhanced improvements if we were going to then have a further conversation of the city either owning the park, building it, providing funds, whatever. And so if we have read that wrong, if we've interpreted that wrong, I'm happy to have Allison chime in and provide any guidance on how we came to that decision, or I'm happy to receive any further direction from the board on what the next steps would be. So I apologize for that confusion.
I think I would like to ask you, Danny, if board members are interested, I mean, in furthering this conversation about the enhancements to the park, do you need us to do not a vote, but what do you call it? A thumbs up and thumbs down type of thing? Or how do we go about this?
We don't necessarily need any action from the board in terms of receiving the information that has been submitted and meeting that contingency. I think to the extent that the board wants us to return either with additional information and or proposal for participation, we can do that. And to Director Johnson's point, there's nothing saying that we can't sit down with Hines and the developers too and try to, have that conversation with them as they further these designs of carrying forth that priority of, really improving ADA access or really looking at an elevated portion of this to be a tot lot. We can absolutely do that. And it's really just a function of what falls within just the normal design process for the project at this point and what falls with whatever direction the board wants to give us to take it even a step further.
All right, board members, we have to move on. So if we would like the staff to come back, give me just a thumbs up. Those that are in favor. All right, so I think most of us are in favor except, oh, never mind. Johnston is in favor as well. And the only one that didn't raise his hand was.
Okay, I'm fine with hearing more.
All right. Please come back with these other options for an enhanced park and see if we can participate or not. Danny.
Yeah, we would do that, and I take very seriously the comments of board members, and we will incorporate those in our discussions with Hines and try to do the best we can to incorporate those. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for the discussion. It's a very interesting project, so I apologize for being so behind on our schedule. We're going to move on to item 6, which is a board appointment to the Redevelopment Advisory Committee. And I hope Rosa Marnoto Bandeirinha is it's here. Are you here, Rosa?
Yes, I am here. Thank you.
Okay, Rosa, thank you so much for applying. Would you like to tell us why you're interested?
Yeah, well, thank you. I am an architect originally, and I now work at a nonprofit, and I work and live on the west side of Salt Lake City. I do not have, I can't yet vote because I'm not a citizen yet, but I do want to be involved as much as I can with the community, and I want to be able to be a part of the discussion and to bring voices to the table that are not always heard. So I think that very briefly explains it.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Anybody would like to ask a question, or are we?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
just want to thank her. Rosa lives in Poplar Grove. She's been active both in the community council in Poplar Grove. She also works for Neighborhood House right there in the neighborhood, so she's deeply embedded there. I appreciate your willingness, Rosa. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. That's awesome, Rosa. Thank you so much. And so we're considering approval for a term ending in January of 2025. I haven't done this at the RDA. Do we need to roll call this or not?
Madam Chair, I believe it's part of your consent agenda later on.
Okay.
So as long as you adopt the consent agenda, that will be part of your adoption.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Rosa, welcome.
Thank you.
We're moving on to number 7. So we are considering a motion to ratify the determination that the board will continue to meet remotely and without an anchor location under House Bill 5002.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Second.
All right. We have a motion by Board Member Fowler and a second by Board Member Dugan. Roll call. Rogers.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Wharton.
Yes.
Mano.
Yes.
Dugan.
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And we have item number 8, report and announcements from the executive director. Which, do we have any announcements? I don't
Madam
see.
Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm not the mayor.
No, this is, I'm asking the mayor.
Okay, okay.
Mayor
I'm like, are you talking to me? I'm sorry. I'm like, no, nope. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, Danny, what are you asking me? I was replying elsewhere.
I was deferring to you first if you had any updates.
No, thank you.
Nope. We have no staff updates either, Madam Chair. We're good.
Okay, and I don't have any reports. Does Dan Dugan have any report? Okay.
No, ma'am.
All right. And I think, item D is a written briefing, which we don't have. Item E is consent. The following items are listed for consideration by the board and can be discussed individually upon request. So a motion to approve the consent agenda is approving the board appointment to the Redevelopment Advisory Committee of Rosa Marnoto Banderinia.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by, hold on, by Wharton and a second by Fowler or Dugan? Dugan, right? Okay. We'll roll call this. Rogers,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Wharton,
Yes.
Mano,
Yes.
Dugan,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And we don't have a closed session for the RDA today. And the board will consider a motion to adjourn as a redevelopment agency and to convene as a city council.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
sorry, this is Cindy. You did have a request for a closed session, but I realize you don't have time. I don't know if the board wants to talk about whether you'd like to have a closed session at a future date or whether you'd like to take the time. I'm not pressing for it. I just want to point that out. And I think your Council Chair Fowler had her hand up.
Go ahead, Council Chair Fowler.
I was just gonna say something about when we are reconvening, not about the closed session. So, I will. No, I whatever the other board members want to do on the RDA potential closed session.
I think it's board member Wharton has the request. Would you like to move forward with that?
Uh,
I think it's a couple board members.
Okay.
yes. Yes, I would.
Okay. So we do have a closed session for the RDA today. And can we time this so that the council starts at a reasonable time? Madam Chair Fowler.
Already a little behind in timing. We have discussed among staff ways to cut budget amendment number 7 down in time. You don't have a formal meeting tonight, so really it's just a matter of how late you want to stay in council meeting. There is an executive session over dinner during council meeting as well. There's another logistical issue, which is that we don't have a separate link created for the closed session. So if you do decide to go into closed session, I think it might be easiest to stay in this link, but that's a separate logistical question if you decide.
Madam Chair, can I ask if this particular closed session could happen at the April meeting, or do we need it at this meeting since we do have a closed session during dinner break? And as I'm looking at our agenda, I feel like there's going to be some discussions on some things already. So I would look towards Chris and James and whoever was interested on this RDA closed session if it can potentially wait. And if not, we will, like Jen said, we can go all night if y'all want.
You know me and late nights. My question is there a possibility that they could both be combined, both closed sessions?
I turn to Katie for that.
I'm thinking, typically the RDA board adjourns and then convenes as the city council. So you would have to leave your RDA meeting open and adjourn in closed session as both. And I'm looking at Cindy, whether you have experience doing that. I haven't seen that done for the purpose of closed sessions before.
We've talked about doing it. I don't remember whether we've actually ever done it. It's just a matter of
So
what the board.
My question was, Cindy, is if we went into closed session as the RDA board and did our closed session as the council, rolled into it, and then came out and went into the council meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what you'd need then is a motion to convene in closed session for RDA for purposes of property negotiation and advice of legal counsel. And as the council, part two would be council as whatever your purposes are.
Eminent litigation.
That would be my suggestion, Madam Chair, is that we do that and do our closed session on both and then roll into the council and kind of give ourselves a little bit of time.
I'm still looking to Katie to see if that's acceptable.
The technical language of the Open Meetings Act is that the body has to convene in an open meeting and make a motion to go into closed session. And I have concerns because right now you're convened as the RDA board. And so you'd have to jump out and jump back in, which is it's just a little tricky. And I'm not trying to be technical on it, but it's a little tricky.
And Cindy Lou is here. Sorry, and I sort of took over a little bit, but Cindy Lou is here. Do you have info, Cindy Lou?
I share the opinion of Katie that we do need to be convened. You would need to be convened as the city council in order to enter the closed session as city council.
Okay. Well, that answers my suggestions. So thanks for nothing.
I think we can do this closed session really quickly. I think that there'll be more of, we'll want to have more of a discussion later, but I would really like to just go into this quickly, put out what we want to talk about, and then hopefully the more substantive discussion we can do later, and we can try to do as quickly as possible. So I'm going to make the motion that we go into closed session and then adjourn. And if people don't agree, then don't vote for it, and we can just go into the council meeting.
I second the motion.
Right. Just to clarify, the motion is to go into closed session for the purpose of acquisition of real property and advice of counsel.
Correct.
Yes. All right. So do we roll call this, Katie? Okay. So the motion was by Wharton, seconded by Dugan. James.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Wharton.
Yes.
Mano.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Dugan. And I'm a yes. All right.
Okay, so council, our board, if you could stay in this WebEx link, and everyone who is not supposed to be here, Bobby, can I ask for your help expediting that process with the attendees? And